Welcome to California in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. After California Attorney General Rob Bonta issued warnings to landlords over anti-price-gouging laws during declared emergencies, Governor Gavin Newsom's office has provided clarifications on which rules are in effect and for how long. Joining me to tell us more about this is the Center Square's California reporter, Kenneth Schrupp. Kenneth, let's start with what Attorney General Rob Bonta was warning, and then get into what clarifications the governor's office issued.
So Rob Bonta sent over 500 warning letters to, I believe, mostly hotels and motels over price increases following the wildfire evacuations. And in addition to those letters, he also issued a press release that said that anti-price gouging rules for hotels and rental housing are in effect through January of next year. These rules, as we've covered earlier in the Center Square, are extremely prohibitive. And the governor's office made sure to tell us that, no, these rules are not in effect through January. They're only in effect through March, which, of course, is still very prohibitive. But there are some ways around these rules. But let's talk more about these rules. If you've already listed a home within the last year, even if it wasn't actually rented out, you can't raise your prices by more than 10% from that. That's in effect through March, I believe, 5th of this year. If you have not ever listed the home for sale, let's say you're an empty nester now and you're thinking you want to rent your house for a couple of years to a family as they rebuild from the Palisades or Altadena homes, you're limited to not charging more than 160% of fair market value. Fair market value sounds fair until you learn that it's actually determined by the federal government based on the number of bedrooms in your house and the zip code. Looking at the communities that are right next to the Pacific Palisades, a 3-bedroom house, the maximum fair market value, 160% of the maximum fair market value, is about $6,700. The cheapest 3-bedroom house in the area, which was listed before the fire at a discount, for about $2.9 million. So the mortgage on that house would have been $20,000. And the house probably would have rented for about $10,000 before the fire. If you wanted to rent the house out at pre-fire rental rate of $10,000, you would be charged by the state for price gouging. You'd be subject to a fine of up to $10,000, up to 1 year in jail, and civil penalties of up to $5,000, plus restitution, damages, and any number of other civil losses. As a result, people are really afraid to list homes for rent because they don't want to go to jail. They don't want to pay massive fines. Bonta just announced the first case against an individual for price gouging. This real estate agent was listing a house for sale in the La Cañada neighborhood. He increased the price by a few $1,000s after the fire started. It wasn't a large amount. It wasn't a large increase. And the house ended up renting to a wildfire family for below what it was originally listed for. But him actually going after this one agent for marginally increasing the price of a listing has made a lot of people afraid of listing their homes. This is exactly the wrong time for that to happen because people need housing soon. If you have a large family, you really can't fit your family into a small, 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. Most apartments in LA are studios, 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, or that's it. We don't really have many 3-bedroom apartments. And so if you have a larger family, as is the case for many of these homes that were lost, especially in the Palisades and Altadena, where people like to have a big family, it's just not enough space. And these rules are keeping people from leasing what should be homes to family.
And as you mentioned, the governor's office clarified that many of these restrictions are only in effect through March, but there are some that are in effect through January of next year. Which ones are those?
Correct. So the rules on rental and hotel prices, those are in effect through March. The ones on service costs and materials costs for rebuilding, those are in effect for a whole year. Of course, economists say that there are a lot of problems with these as well because having prices at market rates relative to current demand and local supply would encourage workers to come here, would encourage more materials to come here. But it does seem like market prices would also result in the same level of civil penalties and even possible imprisonment. However, I just want to go and say I have read through Penal Code 396, and it does seem that there are a number of exemptions. For example, if you are selling materials or services and your costs go up, and you can log how your costs have gone up, you're allowed to increase your prices relative to how much your costs have gone up, as long as you can document that. Or at least that's what it seems. This is not legal advice. There also seems to be a clause about rentals where these rental protections seem to only apply to leases of 1 year or less. Obviously, if you create a lease that is like 1 year and 1 day, or even like 13 or 14 months in a way that's designed to try to get around this, a judge might not look upon that kindly. But potentially a longer lease might not violate this code. So you could continue to rent as you would as if it's like a 1.5 or 2 year long lease. Again, not a lawyer, but that is what a reading of the law seems to be.
Well, Kenneth, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.